Okay. Hello, good evening to those of you joining live. If you attended yesterday at all or today, like this morning session, this lunchtime session, then you are probably familiar with me. But for those of you who are new, my name is Kristina Newton. I am the founder of HYPE. HYPE is a nonprofit organization that provides computer science education specifically for girls of color. We're really working to close the gap in technology for girls who are underrepresented and build a pipeline that is strong and sustainable. So we are partnering with Tara to bring you guys the Education Expo this week. So I'm really excited to be a partner and a co-host in that. While you guys are joining in, we have one of our panelists on. We may have another one or two panelists who will join us this evening, but we'll go ahead and give you guys a couple of minutes to join before we get started. I will share a couple of announcements and updates just in regards to the oh, hi Michaela and Cabral, but make sure that you are using the hashtag ATL Expo in your social media posts, tweets, comments. Let us know how you're enjoying the sessions. Also, make sure that you go online, educationatl.com, and take advantage of all of the amazing content that's been created, the pre-recorded conversations. Go and look at the links and the posts and the profiles of all of our partners who are participating in this event, and reach out to them, connect with them, email them if you're interested in learning how you can either partner, bring their programs or products to your school, or learn from what it is that they're doing. So just wanted to share that these are great ways that you can stay engaged with us and what we're doing, even though this is a virtual event. We want to make sure that it is a meaningful event for everyone involved. So we do have 3 amazing organizations who are going to be participating in the panel today. We have Michaela Streeter, who's the founding principal at the Life School. So hi, Michaela. We have, and Cabral, please tell me if I mispronounce your name, but Cabral Muhammad, who's the co-founder at Zucchini's Homeschool co-op, as well as a lead instructor at the Life School. Was that correct? Okay. And then we have Kelly Wicks, who is a principal at the Boyce L Ansley School. And so this session is all about innovative school models. I'm really excited to kind of dig in and have this discussion with our, esteemed guests and panelists. If you've been joining or watching the recordings from our sessions, then you're familiar with the way that we're going to run this with the structure of these conversations. We're going to start by allowing each of our panelists to give a 5-minute overview of who they are and an introduction of their school and the innovation that they've done. And after each individual goes, then we'll move into one driving question that each of the panelists will be able to respond to, and then we'll take some Q&A from our attendees. We'll dive deeper into conversations and discussion as it occurs, really to see how the conversation goes and take it from there. So I am going to go ahead. It's in the evening, so we want to make sure that we can kick these off on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just so you guys know the order, we're going to have the Life School present first and kind of introduce themselves, then the Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op, and lastly, the Boyce L Ansley School. So let us start. Michaela, whenever you're ready, you can share your screen, your presentation, and give us an introduction of your school.
Awesome. Well, it's great to meet everybody. My name is Michaela Streeter. I am the founding principal of the Life School, and we're located in downtown Atlanta. We're an accredited project-based high school here, focused on redesigning the high school experience to be more around students' real interests, the real world, and exploration. And so I want to share a promo video that we did. I'm going to put it in the chat just in case it may glitch a bit for anyone, but then I can share my screen to show it here as well. So we were featured recently on the news, as well as a separate one on NPR, but I wanted to share this one about our school.
At one high school in downtown Atlanta, creativity takes center stage.
Welcome to the Life School!
From designing and sewing original clothing for a fashion show to creating new beats and making music, students are encouraged to follow their dreams at the Life School.
High school is not about telling who you are. It's like finding out who you are in high school, and coming here is a great way to find out.
We're really disrupting the way that we educate teenagers here in the city. The Life School is a self-directed, project-based high school, which means that students can incorporate their interests and their goals into their high school experience.
You're literally in charge of your education.
They still do algebra, history, and all that, but they're building robots, and they're going to maker spaces and publishing novels in their classes, starting businesses, recording music albums, all sorts of things that connect to their interests and goals. So we're not trying to normalize each student so that everyone comes out to be the same. Each child is on their own unique learning journey, and we want to help them move forward with that, understanding what they're interested in, helping them discover new passions, gradually becoming more responsible and better able to manage their time and projects, and be ready for that independence of college instead of being thrown out into the wild. I really just saw a need in our community to offer something unique and different for our students.
There's still traditional classroom learning, but the push is in each student's passion. For founding principal Michaela Streeter, that passion is in offering this kind of learning to more people.
Just the freedom that we have here can be really helpful if you know how to manage it.
And time for the pursuit of their passion is priceless.
So Journey, tell us about your art.
Well, I have been doing art for some years, and now I'm doing like a whole series where I'm doing multiple paintings with basically the same meaning. These four are all one series, and then these three are another series. I'm doing it for a passion project, also for my classes. I have art here, and basically that's all.
Awesome. So yeah, so that's a bit about the high school, and then Mr. Cabral, you can share about Zucchinis and how it came to be a bit. You can see that one too.
Sure. Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op is a collaborative effort between community members, parents, students at the Life School, and staff as well. So we got together during the pandemic. We were really just looking for opportunities for our children who wouldn't necessarily thrive in an environment where it was just workbooks or they just had to sit in front of a computer. And so just going from my own son and his energy level, there really was a need to create a safe space for young people to still be able to thrive together. So it kind of just built from the Life School community. And then we just kind of grew it from there. It was pretty fun.
Awesome. So Zucchinis and the Life School are in the same building. So you might see some familiar faces, and this one's a little higher production. Thanks. Shout out to Walton Foundation.
When the pandemic struck, many of the parents at the high school where I'm the principal had no safe school options for the younger children. These were families that we love, families that were a part of our school community, and they came to us looking for a solution. I'm Michaela Streeter.
And I'm Cabral Muhammad.
And we founded Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op. Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op is a learning pod for 4 to 10-year-olds. We use student interest to drive learning through hands-on, play-based activities. Our parents were pretty concerned about their younger students, and they came to us and said, we really want to be able to have our kids still learn.
I realize I have not shared my screen. All right, my bad, guys. It's the end of the day.
Many of the parents at the high school where I'm the principal had no safe school options for the younger children. These were families that we love, families that were a part of our school community, and they came to us looking for a solution. I'm Michaela Streeter.
And I'm Cabral Muhammad.
And we founded Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op. Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op is a learning pod for 4 to 10-year-olds. We use student interest to drive learning through hands-on, play-based activities. Our parents were pretty concerned about their younger students, and they came to us and said, we really want to be able to have our kids still learn together in person. So we created the Zucchini's Homeschool Co-op as a collection of those families from our high school community. We're combining the facility and the resources of a traditional school with the flexibility of a homeschool program.
This is very cool. I like this.
The Zucchini's day starts with a morning meeting, and then they do English and math, social studies in the morning, and then throughout the afternoon, they get to work on really cool science projects like this one, and then also their own passion projects that they're really excited to do based on their own interests.
The disconnect for me growing up was not knowing how the stuff I was learning fit with like real life stuff. The main thing about project-based education is that you're creating something. You have something that you can hold, look at, be proud of, and then actually have direct application later on.
This is from African American Read Aloud Stories.
Children should enjoy what they're learning. They should feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally as well. It should be a safe space for just who they are as people. And it should be a place where they can all be nerds together.
Are you holding on? It's gonna go faster. Okay. The Zucchini's program helped us to continue to build our businesses, and I'm really grateful for the freedom it has allowed us as adults, but also for him just to be in a more structured environment in terms of his learning.
It's important to remember that life doesn't stop just because the pandemic hit, and the need to provide for one's family doesn't go away.
No one could have anticipated this situation, but it's allowed us to create this wonderful community that's having an incredible impact. And we see it every day during drop-off and pick-up, the enthusiasm on the kids' faces to come to school and learn and have fun. And just the peace of mind for the families, knowing that their kids are safe in the middle of a pandemic.
Zucchini's is really how our families have come together to share care. And it just emerged as this beautiful program that we really hope continues.
So that's a little bit about each program, and we're excited to share and discuss with you guys today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michaela and Cabral, the Life School and Zucchini's. Kelly, if you are ready to share your presentation and introduce us to the Ansley School.
Sounds good. I just want to say super impressed. I found like kindred spirits in you too, and I'm excited to share my program with you. And I don't know why we don't know each other.
Hey, yes.
I'm happy for this opportunity, but I am the principal of the Boyce L Ansley School, which is also located in downtown Atlanta. We're probably blocks away from each other, but we're a school that caters to children who have or who are experiencing homelessness exclusively. And we saw a need in the city of Atlanta, like a lot of urban cities, where many people don't realize how many children are experiencing homelessness and the lack of schooling that happens as a result of that situation. So the numbers don't lie, and you guys can read for yourself and you can Google it. It's an issue, it's a real big issue, and it's a growing issue. And so the founder, Kate Kennedy, along with a small group of people, recognized that need through St. Luke's Church, which is also located in downtown Atlanta. And people often ask us, who do you cater to? And we tell them, and it blows their mind. So while the Life School is focusing on high school. We found that most programs focused on middle school and high school for those types of issues. And we found that it was almost not too late, but that there was more that could be done when we started at an earlier age. So our school starts at preschool and we grow a grade every year until we are at 8th grade. And right now we're at 1st grade level. So we've been around for 3 years. A startup school that focuses on children and their families, which is a little bit different of a spin than some of the other programs that are out there. So some of these things that create homelessness and a lack of schooling for our kids include some of these other areas. And for us, what we're noticing is that our families deal with toxic stress and chronic complex trauma. So these aren't things that they're dealing with every once in a while. This is just a lifestyle. That lifestyle leads to instability and insecurity in a lot of different areas. So we work to mitigate those areas and provide a stable and secure environment for our families and for our students. Our mission is to empower these children and empower these families to thrive beyond circumstances. So when we talk about the kinds of things that our school does that's different than other schools, if academics was the only issue, that'd be an easy issue, I think, to address. But what we notice is that need for psychological flexibility that is missing from so many people. And that is that executive function to be able to maneuver and deal with the obstacles that life presents. We find that that's a challenging area for a lot of our families, and a lot of those kinds of, or lack thereof, skills are also missing in terms of the upbringing of a lot of our kids. So we work to integrate all of that into a school system. So psychological flexibility, executive functioning become the foundation of our program. And if they can maneuver and manage every day and life's obstacles, then we can focus on the academics. Then we also can build up the social and emotional learning that happens in this kind of environment. So Ansley School is a nonprofit 501c3 private school. Private so that we don't have to deal with a lot of the red tape and the bureaucracy of a charter school. And that allows us to be flexible and to move and to create something that's unique and reflective of the needs of our community. So for example, testing and grades. Lots of times our kids can't make one full year's worth of growth academically in a year, but not because they're not capable, it's because they have a lot of distractions in their lives. So we offer the flexibility and the ability to maneuver and promote their strengths and not be regulated by standards or by testing. Now that being said, we do things like MAP testing, which measure growth of the individual child, and then we can tailor the curriculum around that individual child. And when you guys were talking about Zucchini and Life School being a project-based program, we're project-based as well, because we find that hands-on developmental activities is more appropriate for our population. We find that words like experiential, relevant, and practical give meaning to academics and in life. So we look for those programs and we looked hard for those programs that integrate those qualities. Now that being said, it's hard to find anything that encompasses everything that we need. So as a startup school, we're creating all of that. The need for unique individuals, superheroes of education that want something different than the traditional school, 7:30 to 3:30 job. We attract people who want to start up their own schools or want to become trainers or lecturers, because we're providing an environment that's really innovative and really creative and really fills the gap in a gigantic system, a machine of a system we call education, that has a tendency to, for lack of a better analogy, put the square peg in the round hole. You know, we're trying to create opportunities for all of the kids fit, whatever that looks like on an individual basis. So a lot of the things that you see in this presentation are the kinds of things that we integrate into the program. Applied mathematics is another way of saying experiential, practical, relevant, project-based, hands-on, developmental. You know, we're trying to really take the holistic approach that is a buzzword that a lot of different programs use and make it into something meaningful that's specific to our community, which is a community that struggles with secure housing. So Intensive family support is another big part of our program. So not only are we working with our scholars, but we're working with our families. And although we don't provide housing, we mitigate between all the resources that Atlanta has to offer and our parents, empowering our parents, finding those resources and helping them get the things that they need to provide security and safety for their families so that their students can come to school and they can learn those kind of qualities that will make them successful in life. So that's a little bit about our school. It's so much more to it than this presentation can possibly cover. But I appreciate this opportunity. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. And I'm sure that, for all three of you, a 3 to 5 minute introduction is definitely not long enough to talk about everything that it is that you guys are doing. And this, the next 30 minutes might not be enough time either, but I do hope that we're able to kind of dig deeper into like what your schools are doing, some of the outcomes that you've seen, even hear a little bit more about like your story and what led you to this position that you're in right now. Would also like to remind our attendees that if you have specific questions for our panelists, feel free to insert those into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll make sure that we can get those answered as well. But I will just start by the driving question for this evening, for this topic specifically around innovative schools. And our driving question here is, what do you see as some of the biggest barriers to establishing an innovative school or innovative like learning space or learning model that can work at scale? And I say this because, a lot of times whenever we do start something new, that's the question that people want to know is, can this scale? How many people can you reach? And I would love for you to, kind of talk about that, but also if scale is not even a factor or something that, you should be considered, definitely bring that to the table as well. Should we even be considering scale when we're thinking about innovative models and innovative approaches to learning models and education? So I'll allow each of you to kind of respond to that question. Michaela, I'll start with you and what this looks like at the Life School. Then Kamal, you can talk about, give your response from a Zucchini's co-op perspective. And Kelly, you can share last on what this looks like at the Boyce L Ansley School.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question and definitely one that's important to think about. So I did my master's at Stanford, and one of the things that we talked a lot about was this topic of sort of, we get these great ideas, how do we get them to everyone? And I think that the dynamic of the three different organizations here of the panelists kind of reflects that, there isn't this sort of one size fits all solution that we need to consider how to scale to the masses. I think every student should have all of these different flavors of options available to them and their family, even within a family, what kind of school works for each kind of different kid. And what we're finding as we continue to grow these two programs is that that part of an innovative school is the community and focusing on not getting to 1,000 kids or 10,000 kids, but really maintaining the connectedness among the families, and that is a big part of folks sharing with one another, and also how technology has developed over the last 5-10 years. I remember when some of these bigger like charter networks were first coming on, and the focus was really on like, how do we get one of these in every city and creating custom curriculum for that. But I think that there's a number of technology tools that are now available that whether they're sending you like materials science in a box or robotics in a box or something, or they're creating these adaptive math video games or something that make it easier to start these programs, because that this is really engaging, rich curriculum materials that are available. To say, if I can build a community of folks who are excited to learn together in a new way, I can design the things that we're most passionate about designing whether that's like how we do science outdoors in nature, and know that like here's this really great reading curriculum that we can take advantage of. And you can sort of pick and choose and know that like you can go relatively quickly compared to how it was maybe even 5 or 10 years ago to really get off the ground and get started. You don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I love what you said, even at the beginning about, really focusing on making sure that every child, almost like this buffet, right? That every child has the opportunity to choose and select what's best for them. What's unfortunate is that we don't, like, that's not what we see in the world right now. But I like that kind of thinking in terms of scale and not necessarily creating this one model at scale, but more so changing the way that we think and what we offer in our schools and in our cities and states and in the country at large. So I love that. Cabral, I'll let you kind of share.
Sure. I think Ms. Michaela's answer was very thorough. I would add to that there's I think a sort of built-in desire in some education institutions to be the answer, right? To be the answer to poverty, to be the answer to socioeconomic challenges and inequities in education and things like that. But we have to be comfortable exercising our connection to other members in our community, other agencies in our community, other people in our community, and, kind of allowing us to really build on what our strengths are and capitalize on the strengths of others and really network and kind of create like a continuum of care around young people so that we could just, we could all be the answer together instead of breeding this false sense of competition between schools or agencies or this idea that we're competing for limited funding when we write grants and stuff like that. It just really, it undermines the effort that we're all actually very dedicated to. Like, this work isn't, the people who are doing this work aren't attracted to it because of the money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not why we're here. We're here because we care. We're here because we believe in our children. We believe that there's work to be done there in order to prepare our children and thus our whole society for the future. And to be able to empower parents and families to kind of pick and choose, what we're really talking about is that playlist, right? That's good. Putting together a playlist and that each student is able to do that and really focus on the things that they're passionate about, the things that really provoke learning and curiosity and asking questions and going further, because it never feels like work when you are, when you're that fascinated, when you're that interested, when you're that engaged. And so we don't have to convince young people to do their work if they're in love with what they're doing. And so what we're really trying to do at Zucchini's is sort of emulate what happens at the Life School and really cultivate a love of learning and a love of taking charge and advocating for one's own education.
Even at 4 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to explain the playlisting again briefly. So you just mentioned it was this idea, not that like, because some playlists in some instances is like do this activity, then this activity, but we're talking about on a broader scale of like, you get this from Zucchini's, and then maybe you get your like sports from public school, and you get your music from this program that's really great at it. And how do we use this space with the pandemic to not say like, how do we get any one program to do all of everything, but how do we spread out the funding so that families can get from this place or that place a collection of things that really makes a rich learning experience, a well-rounded experience for their kids.
Yeah, and I know we're only in the second day of the expo, but I hope that if there's one thing that people get by the end of this week is the importance of collaboration and how powerful, it is. I think that's one of the beautiful things, that I'm really excited and honored that Tyra has allowed me to be a part of this. And I think that it's one of the beautiful things about having all of, us different partners participate and watch each other's videos and learn what different organizations are doing and kind of where they can use support and where there are just seamless areas of collaboration. And that's one thing that I really hope that we get by the end of this week is how it is important for us to collaborate with one another, because what we do is for the children that we support, and that's really what's going to give like our kids the best experience possible as well, and it's going to help to make sure that we don't burn out as individual organizations. So thank you for sharing that. Kelly, I'll kind of tee it to you to respond to the same question.
What are my challenges? So we all have the same and different challenges, but what keeps me up at night these days is not necessarily academics or getting them into college, because I think you can have really great grades, you can get through college, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to maneuver through life and everyday obstacles, which is what a lot of our families and a lot of our students struggle with. So those executive functions really are the priority for us in getting through the day when they get here, and working through things that might not seem huge to the average person that has the stability and security of housing or food or family. For our kids, walking through the door first is what's important. And when they don't get to be first, having those meltdowns, how quickly can we get through them? And it sounds so, that's simplifying it. But honestly, we're trying to get through the day and help them stay focused and functional, show up on time, manage their time, work collaboratively, problem solve, conflict resolution, all of those kinds of skills. And people call them a really wide variety of names, like executive functioning, like psychological flexibility, practical life skills. Those things for us seem to come first and foremost and be super important. The academics, the sports, all of those things are components, and that give them opportunities to exercise all of those executive functioning skills in order to be functional and live productive, successful, stable lives, that seem to be a struggle for our community and our population, which is why they have toxic stress and chronic trauma, and their life seems to be a roller coaster ride. So we're really trying to create something, and it's not as easy for any of us just to find a curriculum or all the pieces of the puzzle or to collaborate. It's really important for the people that are involved with our program to understand it's not just about getting them books. It's not just about getting them food or resources. It's really about living a life that's functional on a daily basis. And we have to break down our day because our kids start out young, an hour. My teachers come to me and say, I can't get through the morning. They can't focus. They're having, meltdowns. They're arguing. I'm like, so then we just need to break it down from 8 to 9. Can they get through 8 to 9? And then eventually, can they get through 8 to 10? We break it down into little small pieces so that by the time they graduate 8th grade, they can get into a high school program and they can deal with scheduling classes, with GPAs, with grades. In 2021, there's so much pressure. It was so much easier growing up and the expectations were a lot less. But I fear, that today, coupled with the situations that our families face, on top of the pressure and the stimulation that's constantly coming at them, it's a lot to process. My kids have access to information that I didn't have access to until I was an adult, and they're trying to process all of it. They're connecting the dots. You can see it on their faces every year that goes by. We're dealing with things that we didn't think we were going to be dealing with at this young age. It's fascinating, it's scary, and at the same time, these kids are unbelievably resilient and strong, and the parents come from all over Atlanta to get their kids here. They take practically planes, trains, and automobiles to get here. 2 hours here, drop their kids off, 2 hours back. Most of our parents are working and are in committed relationships. And, the face of homelessness and the ripple effect is really unlike, I think, a lot of what the stereotypical visions are for that. And I just think for us, and the challenge that we have is getting them those daily skills. Then we do the academics, then we do the sports, and then all of it starts to fall into place. And that's the struggle, because we feel the pressure of tests, we feel the pressure with donors, we feel the pressure of grading, we feel all of that. My teachers, we do this little creep, where I'm just like, okay, wait a second, we gotta back up. We just did our report cards and we moved to not yet instead of, completed, not completed, A's and B's, that those subliminal messages that send a message to our kids that say that you're failing, that it's not working, that create this atmosphere where they want to crawl into a cave and quit because life is too hard, that we need to change our vocabulary. I need to change my job descriptions. I need to stay away from grading anything that tries to put them in a box, because they're brilliant and they're strong. They just happen to have a lot going on in their lives, and I need to help them figure out how to manage and deal with it.
Thank you, Kelly. I feel like after this week, we need to have a happy hour or something. Next week is spring break for a lot of people. So maybe we do a virtual happy hour or go out for drinks. I don't know. But
I know it's so heavy and it's so intense, but it's so cool that we can do this in 2021. We couldn't do this 20, 30 years ago. People recognize this. I mean, to be talking to people who share the same vision. I mean, I thought I was special and unique. Apparently there's a lot of me out there. I'm talking to two of them, right?
Can we just add that what you're doing, we wholeheartedly believe in it. Like it's such a compelling and necessary task and labor of passion that you've undertaken. Like students, one of the things that we know for sure, and, I've been an educator for 20 years. One of the things that I know for sure personally, and we've seen it time and time again here at the Life School, is that students aren't learning if they don't feel safe. Mm-hmm. So we have to create an environment of safety, and our objective at the Life School has been safety in their identity, right? Identity safety, cultural safety, things like that. But there's a big component to safety that we really are just now getting the opportunity to really explore dialogue and conversation about, and that's like having a roof over your head. And I said this before, but like, what is homeschooling to someone who doesn't have a home? What is distance learning if you don't have internet or access to internet or a computer or things like that? And, we've had kids who fall asleep in class and you talk to them and you find out they're falling asleep in class because they're staying up all night protecting their mom and their sisters because they're in a homeless shelter and they want to make sure no one takes their stuff or hurts them. And you can't penalize a kid for that. So what these children need really is safety and grace and understanding. And that A and B kind of regimented, really hard line, that's not intuitive, right? And it doesn't factor in all the things that these young people are facing, because you're right, they are brilliant. They are.
They're going to get there. It's just going to look different. And we need to be okay with that. We need to be okay with being different and not, and it's hard for our parents. It's hard to feel comfortable on knowing that if you put them in a traditional school, they're not going to be necessarily where everybody is right now.
Right.
But they bring a set of skills that is unique and resilient that other kids that don't have these insecurities don't have. And that's like a beautiful strength that we're trying to harness and reorganize. And so, I'm so grateful to be here, because I think, one of our challenges is, what do they do when they leave here? Can we find a program that understands where they've come and where they're going, or that do they only value grades? Is that what we're reduced to? Grades, and being in a grade, a test score, is that really the be all end all? And it's not for us, and it doesn't need to be for my kids here. And that's what we're working to help, spread that message.
Yeah. And so students are not zoned to your schools, right? So how do they find you, and what's the application process to kind of getting involved or engaged in where you guys are?
I'll yield to you guys first. We'll go in the order.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so for the Life School, we have a application process that includes coming for a tour and spending a day as
Shadow day,
yeah. And then writing the application, that's online. And then Zucchini has a similar process.
We try to keep it as simple as we can. We don't want the application itself to be a barrier. And so, we work with the parents to fill it out. We try to keep it really brief. And then we try to do a lot in terms of making sure that it's accessible and affordable for a variety of different families.
Yeah, I would say that's Yeah, a goal for both programs that it's affordable. I'm just dropping the links in the chat for folks to check out as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
For us, we find them in, we have relationships with all of the local shelters, the motels and the streets. So we go to those, and at this point, since we're in our third year, all the shelters know about us. And so we unfortunately have no shortage of applicants. There's no tuition. We pay for everything. We do martyr cards to get them here, and we work to fill out the paperwork because that's a huge barrier to a lot of our families. They don't have paperwork because they don't have a place to put it. So they don't have the same birth certificates, social security numbers. So they don't go to public school because they move around a lot, and they don't have any paperwork, and they're embarrassed, frankly, or they're working from 6 to 3. And so it's helping them figure out those resources through the shelters, through all the social services agencies in Atlanta.
Great. And so when we think about like innovation and collaboration, are you guys doing anything currently to collaborate with, traditional schools, public schools, traditional classrooms? And if not, like what could that look like? What's one way that you would want to connect and collaborate with traditional schools?
That's a good question. We're open to ideas. I think that one thing that we do, certainly during the summer, is creating space for students who attend traditional schools to come in and experience a bit of what we're doing in like bite-sized chunks. So we have summer programs. We have a Girls Rise Up summer program that connects dance, leadership, and technology coding together all in one really cool summer experience. And so that's something where folks from anywhere can come and participate and experience, like, what is it like to learn through, more hands-on, more project-based experiences, build some confidence, build some more sense of self and some agency, as well as some like technical skills that then you can take back to your community or your schools to push things there. We've also done some professional development events where teachers from other schools could come in. We did one around environmental engineering, where teachers could come in, or not environmental engineering, it was environmental economics. And teachers could come in and learn, like, how do you incorporate, nature, the environment, the outdoors into your classes, whether it's particularly an economics class, or just any space where you're talking about like how the economy works, or finance, or nature. And so we had, because we have a lot of animals, so we have rabbits, chickens, turtles, fish, hamster, like all these different animals, and love just to go hiking and biking and horseback riding and all these things with the kids. And so how do you incorporate some of those experiences into like a day-to-day or into bigger experiences that you plan out and connect those back to a number of different classes across the curriculum? Those are some things, but I'm definitely open to talking with folks who might have other ideas about potential ways to collab.
Awesome. And there's a question in the chat that kind of, in the Q&A, that kind of is along the same lines. If I am a teacher at a traditional school, what are some like recommendations or strategies and ways that like I could bring innovative strategies into my classroom? What would you kind of recommend there?
Well, that's a loaded question. I think, along the lines of life school and zucchinis, animals are a natural source of interest for kids. So we have, of course, the 5 classes of vertebrates and are working on the 7 classes of invertebrates here, because that's a really great way for kids to learn for social, emotional, STEAM, all of that stuff. And we're big into gardening. I mean, those are natural, normal things, especially in an urban environment, that we can bring into it. So as far as a traditional environment goes, it's looking at your community and finding out what interests them and integrate that into the program. So if they're into NASCAR, bring in stuff about NASCAR, really understanding who you're serving instead of making those kids meld to your needs as a teacher. I find that is the general and standard advice, that I give. And then as far as like collaboration with the traditional schools, we do some things with APS in terms of Title I funding. we mostly are looking for programs that are filling the gap that we need. There are a lot of really cool things happening in there in public and private and charter, but it doesn't necessarily fill the need that we have. So for example, the Bedford School is another really cool program that focuses and only serves children with learning disabilities pre-K through 8th grade. We do a pen pal program with their middle school to encourage writing. So the kids have mailboxes here. So we look, because we need writing and we need a reason why we need to write, because the art of writing is being lost in general anyway. But that aside, we're looking to find things that spur interest and give meaning to why we're doing and learning the things that we're learning. So that's one example of the types of collaboration that we do with other schools.
Gosh, I love that. And sorry, Cabral, I'll let you go, but I just love that example of collaborating with the pen pal model. And it's a way to think. I think sometimes we hear the word like innovation or new or whatever, and we get scared. And we think we have to completely change things or create something completely different. But collaboration doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be difficult, and neither does innovation. It doesn't even always have to include technology, or anything like that. And so I would love for people to begin, just thinking, at that first kind of step or that first level, kind of like you mentioned earlier, Kelly, just get from 8 to 9, like what's one thing that you could tweak to bring another level of innovation into your classroom, and just do that. So thanks for sharing that, Kelly and Cabral. I'm sorry I cut you off, but you can go ahead and share as well.
No problem. I think what first ditto to what Kelly said and what Michaela said, absolutely. I would just add like sports to that and music programs as well. I think there's like a built-in, amazing built-in system of sports and the arts, typically in larger schools or more traditional schools, that that families who choose a smaller or a private school will sometimes have to sacrifice. And so instead of making families pick, maybe they can get that buffet style that we were talking about, that playlist that we were talking about. I think that would be very beneficial. As far as like what to do, because I've been a teacher in traditional classrooms as well. And I know that a big part of my struggle was getting permission to explore certain topics or to spend more time even on certain topics, and to inject culture into the classroom. It's difficult. I think we have a tendency to want to be safe and try to like appeal to a broad, mass, and there's this idea that we have to wipe away or make culture invisible in order to make the classroom a safe space for everyone, instead of celebrating culture and celebrating differences and things like that. So there's definitely some barriers to innovation in a traditional setting that would require really a fundamentally different way of thinking on the administrative level to allow the teachers to really engage students and turn it into a process where people are learning together, instead of what is that phrase? Sage on the stage.
Oh yeah.
Sage on the
guide
stage.
on the side.
Right, but identity safety, cultural competency and relevancy, and our school really, just looking at how things are, it's so important to have like a lens of equity and social justice. So that's kind of braided into a lot of what we do, whether it's chemistry and biology, or we explore food deserts, all types of stuff. But being able to understand the world that we live in gives direct application to what the students are learning and makes it more relevant for them.
Yeah, I would just add that. I mean, I think you're being modest, but I would say that Cabral does a really good job of creating space for students to talk about like tough topics around social justice and around things happening in the world. And something that he's named in the past is that it's rare that students get a space to talk about things happening right now, like the pandemic and the shootings and all the protests and everything over the summer. voting rights, all these things that are going on, and like how do we create space in our classrooms to push those conversations? And I know sometimes in more traditional spaces there is this sort of push to just get through everything, but how do we give students more of a voice and feel more comfortable and confident to have those conversations around social justice and even things that might make folks squirm a bit, but could kind of break down some of these barriers that we see and at a larger scale in our country, where folks are just sort of living in silos and bubbles of what they already believe. But you know, we need to question those things and feel comfortable to do that in school, to have those kinds of discussions.
Mm-hmm. And extending on those conversations to their families,
Mm-hmm.
parents.
Mm-hmm.
We need a better schedule, and not a schedule where back to back to back to back to back, and the whole day.
Exactly.
You know, like next year for us, after like this year, I'm like, we need to go 8 to 5 because we just need flexibility.
Yeah.
Pressed against the wall and there's no time. You know, as a staff, it's the same thing. You know, next year for the calendar, I want to do like a day and a half off, where we just get to sit and brainstorm. We never have time for these kind of conversations. Everybody's in a rush. Everybody's overscheduled, and that's being transferred onto our kids. You know, so they don't have time to play, process information, have these really cool conversations, take advantage of these opportunities about social injustice. And I mean, they're just, even at this young age, the kind of things that they come up with is really impressive and amazing, but we don't have enough time, you know, to explore those kinds of things, because you're right, we're under the pressure of a checklist, you know, through it. And I think that's like one of the biggest challenges that we face as educators today. We don't have enough flexibility and enough time.
Yeah, I think that's something that the pandemic has really called out for all of us is that this traditional schedule that we knew of, like coming in person every single day, all day long, that doesn't work for everybody. And like having some variety, having some flexibility around like what school is and what the day and the week is, and what they are and how they function in our lives and in our schedule has just, I think that's really pushed us to think it in new ways. I know like Zucchini's meets every day in person, but high school meets 4 days. You can come in person, you can work from home. I mean, for older kids, I think that works really well. And just like, how do we leverage this moment in education to do something different and to figure out what work a lot better for kids and for their families.
Yeah, some kids have jobs, you know,
Yeah.
they're like helping take care of their families through the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have responsibilities toward their younger siblings and things like that, or health concerns. Maybe there's an elder living in the house or something like that. We don't want to create a situation where students are penalized for not having a physical butt in the seat kind of situation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's definitely important to be flexible, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
What you're talking about too is being reflective, you know, and I think as a small innovative school like yours and ours, what's nice about not being a part of the main system or a bigger system or a system dependent on tuition and things like that to fund the school is that we get to be reflective. You know, we get to look at things and we get to make changes quickly and easily, because while we have this cool opportunity to go virtual, which made things accessible for a lot of my students in shelters that couldn't get here. So that was like a really amazing thing. We still have systems that are putting kids on virtual from 8 to 4 all day. You know, like remembering to be like reflective and being like, what can come out of this? And not get caught up. And it's so hard to do. And it's something we battle, you know, every single day, but being reflective, I think is a really important quality of any educational system.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys talked about the importance of creating safe spaces, giving students opportunities and a space to reflect, to have discussions, to kind of process things. And we talked about social justice and just justice in general. And so there is a question in the chat that says, you know, what impact do you feel SROs currently have when it comes to supporting these students? I'm not familiar with what an SRO is, so I'll let you guys explain. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. To have, because
the second part of the question, the second part of the question is, do you believe removing police from schools and investing in more counselors would help?
Everybody could always use more counselors and more therapy and more just reflection and talk of feelings and training.
Yeah.
We need to do SROs differently though, just like everything else. This is a different time with a different kind of kid than we were dealing with before. They're way savvier and we know they're way more capable than we ever gave them credit for. So I think the role of an SRO can be like super important, but it's all how you frame it, and it's all how you frame it within that community. I've known some amazing SROs, but it's just like anybody else. You know, they're good ones, and then they're better ones. You know,
Yeah.
ones that share the same kind of attributes that we look in all of our staff. You know, passionate, creative, innovative. SROs want that opportunity as well. So I don't believe in removing them. I believe in looking at that person, that position, and see how it fits into the framework of that community and what they need.
Yeah, how that SRO shows up, I think, has a lot to do in terms, a lot to do with how they can be activated in the school setting, because I feel like there are some who rely heavily on like disciplinary responsibilities or truancy responsibilities versus relationships. Exactly. But there are some that absolutely love kids and love getting involved and being that role model, things like that. And those are really vital as well. So I mean, it's just understanding, I guess, whether or not you want what role you want that SRO to fill in your educational atmosphere, in your institution. Walking around in uniform, things like that, especially in today's climate, can be very off-putting, even intimidating for a lot of kids, especially if you deal with sensitive populations, or vulnerable populations. You know, whether that's citizenship or, you know, any number of things. And we hear all the time in today's news about, you know, police officers engaging unarmed people of color with extreme responses.
Yeah,
even kids. Yeah, like, you know, we saw something just this week about a 5-year-old being handcuffed. I can't really think of a scenario where a 5-year-old needs to be handcuffed, you know, especially not, you know, at their school or something like
just
that.
pick them up.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of alternatives there.
Yeah.
So, you know, same with community police. Like, what do you want them there for? Because it could be a lot bigger than just discipline.
Sorry, I was gonna say we have time for maybe one more question. There's another question in the chat asking about professional development. You guys are sharing some really amazing techniques and tips and strategies that you've incorporated into your schools that I'm sure there are many traditional school teachers who, you know, would love to kind of learn from and incorporate them into their classroom. Have you provided professional development to staff at traditional schools? And, you know, are there strategies that could be taught within a professional development kind of setting or workshop?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we have on our website a list of resources of folks that we think are amazing and who do great work in this space, and as well as some schools that are like-minded around the country who will have additional resources. I think some of it is just sort of the de-schooling of ourselves as adults and as educators to understand that there are other ways to think about working with young people, other ways to approaching education than our own experience. Just spending some time to unpack all of that and think about other ways of doing school. I mean, I went to a traditional high school with SROs and, I mean, really police in full uniform. One of my high school teachers called us animals in a zoo. So there's a lot of negativity all day, every day. And so I think I understand a fair amount about that experience. And I remember going to a school in California and just seeing like this was a place where, you know, children of color were loved and were like encouraged and supported and had high expectations. It was really novel. And so, you know, it really depends on, you know, where you're starting from, of what you've seen, you think is possible. And I think that really limits or expands the scope of what innovation could look like, either in your classroom or your organization or for your family. And so just starting with that education of just all the things that are out there in the world. And then the second thing I was going to say, is that we as our school look at professional development as a very personalized thing for the educator. Like we look at the school's experience for the student as being very personalized. And so what an educator who's been here for 20 years or in the field for 20 years needs versus a new educator, or one who's teaching math versus one who's teaching social studies, what they need, is really different. And so how do we get to know each of our teachers and staff members and understand what that individual person needs to grow and move forward? I think it's really important to apply that same approach to our staff as we do to us.
And I think just to kind of piggyback off of that, a lot of the teachers in traditional schools have had to be creative in their lessons and delivery and things like that. So, I mean, creating a community where we can borrow ideas from each other, I think would be incredibly valuable.
For me, in my time here at Ansley in Atlanta, what I'm feeling and finding is that I just want to create my own training program and professional development for my staff and for others to come and participate in a learning lab type of environment where we provide professional development outside of academic is important, and we want to do professional training or centered around that. But the issues that I brought up, even programs that focus on an urban aspect, city training to be a teacher in a city is different than what we're doing here at Ansley, and probably programs at Life School that focus on the term that I keep using, how to instill executive functioning skills or practical life skills in students. And I'm trying to, when we do professional development, establish a mindset in the staff or in the teachers that come through this school that says we need to evolve quickly because our children are evolving and changing quickly. So it's more professional development centered around a mindset and a way to approach things and a way to problem solve in a way that there's always more than one answer, to address academics, address the curriculum, address. So my teachers are always like, I just want you to come up with like a blanket rule. When they do this happens to them. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but they can make the same mistake. But how we address it is going to be different from one person to the next, to the next, to the next. How I tell my teachers to turn down the air, I have to do it 7 different times because there's 7 different classrooms and there's 7 different people. So I need to, when we do professional development, I find establishing that kind of a mindset, where, okay, here's the information, but that doesn't mean that that's the be all end all. You need the ability to take that information and meld it around the community that you're serving. And you also need to know that it's going to change and it's going to evolve from year to year, and that's the beauty behind an innovative school program like ours, is that we're not stuck, but it's also the challenge, because it gets tiring and you need a lot of energy because it's always changing, it's always evolving. And you need to be the type of person that can handle and appreciate that kind of approach.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Like, I knew that we wouldn't be able to get through everything in the allotted time. I definitely want to encourage everyone who's attending, all of our partners, make sure that you're reaching out to the other organizations and partners that are represented this week. I can't stress enough how important that word collaboration is. And this is a unique opportunity that we have this week to get a sneak peek into like what's going on in Atlanta, what's going on in education outside of our 4 walls, outside of our organizations. And so take advantage of it. Make sure that you guys are connecting, make sure that you're, reaching out on social media, using the ATL Expo hashtag, and make sure that you join us tomorrow at 11:30, where we'll be having another lunchtime conversation. Really excited to be with you guys this evening, and I hope that you've enjoyed it and that you have a wonderful, wonderful day, one wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.